Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of At Home with Mark, Season 4, Episode 6, Rhett freaking Shull. Dude,
What's up,
thanks for
man?
doing this, man.
Thanks for having me. It's gonna be a good time.
Dude, this is going to be fantastic. So just to kind of hit the ground running, I ask everybody this because I'm so curious about people's like journey and the beginning of everything. But what is your like earliest musical memory?
Eric Clapton unplugged in the back seat of my parents' car when I was about, honestly, I want to say maybe 2 years old. Um,
Whoa.
yeah, I have a weird. My wife Tilly and I talk about this a lot, where I have a lot of memories of like early childhood. I can remember a lot from 2, 3, 4 years old on, and Unplugged. So I was born in 1990, and Clapton's Unplugged, I guess, would have come out. They had it on cassette, so maybe it was 93. I don't know, but it was early on, and they had it on cassette, and they just left it in the car. And so every time I was in the car from the age of 2 or 3 on to 4 or 5, I was hearing that record. And yeah, as a result, that album holds a real special place for me.
That was a big one, man. I can remember. I'm a bit older than you. Not a ton, but I was born in 79. But I can remember, dude, like when Tears, from Heaven came out and everything,
Hmm.
Tears in Heaven. And I remember being in like my local music shop and them having like the sheet music for it.
Right.
So that album was definitely like a pivotal moment in music history at that time, I think, for sure.
Outside of Cream, I love Clapton's playing, but I admittedly don't listen to much other than Cream, which I think is one of the greatest bands of all time.
Mhm.
And the Unplugged record. I like The Road to Escondido, the album he did with JJ Cale. God, I must have been in high school when that came out. But yeah, other than it was like Cream, and then you know Heavy Drugs Clapton, then he got clean, and that era I'm not so into. And then he did the Unplugged record, which I think is phenomenal. And actually, my dad and I in 2019, right before the pandemic, he and I went to Crossroads. It was kind of a father son thing he and I had wanted to do for years and years. And I wasn't playing Crossroads, but I had some friends that were, and so we went in Dallas, and like just it was a cool father son moment. Clapton opened the show, the whole festival, with an acoustic set, and they ended up playing like 3 or 4 songs off of that record. And my dad and I were sitting in the crowd on the floor, basically just crying
Oh
the whole
man,
time. Yeah, it
that's
was
amazing.
cool. It was cool.
That's amazing. Dude, I always loved that record and, like, the video for Alberta when he forgot his
Yeah,
pick. That
yeah, yeah,
moment,
yeah.
like, even on the record, was like, "Oh, oh, hold on, hold on, hold
Hang on,
on."
hang on, hang on, hang on. Yeah, dude, it's like I have that exact thing burned into my brain. Yeah.
Me
Yeah.
too, man.
Oh, hang on, hang on, hang on. Yeah, I know.
I love that, man. My buddy, in high school drove a '72 Nova, like, orange rusty Nova. It was in great shape, but he put, like, this crazy expensive, like, speaker system in it.
Right.
So when we drove to school in the morning, and it's high school, so like he had to pick me up at like 7 a.m. He'd either be cranking that record or like Corrosion of Conformity, like two opposite
Right.
sides of the spectrum.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
that
yeah.
that that album, like during high school, man, I just remember that was on repeat, man. Um, so is your dad a player too? Then
No, nobody in my family are. It's
okay,
weird. I sort of I think I think my mom would have been a musician. She's a singer, and she grew up like singing in church and stuff, but they never really, like, she never pursued an instrument or anything. And honestly, there's no one that I know of in my immediate or distant family that were musicians or players or anything like that. And it was just something that I was enamored with from an early age. And just kind of had to figure out on my own, for better or for worse. There's benefits to being, kind of forging your own path, I guess, as a young person. This is pre YouTube. The internet was a thing, but YouTube and all this other stuff wasn't. And so I didn't have a guitar teacher, which I now regret. But for the first 6 years of my playing, I was completely self-taught, just learning by ear, which was good. I was developing my ear early on. But yeah, I had no real guidance, and I didn't know anything about gear or tone, or like, my first guitar was a Squier. It was a Starcaster by Fender. So it was like not even a Squier Strat. It was a, you know, some knockoff Fender. And it was probably a year into playing or 2 years into playing before I understood what the five-way switch did. Like, I didn't know that it switched pickups because I had no one to tell me what it did.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, nobody in my family plays or does anything like that. Now, my once I got into it though, my parents were really supportive and they got really into music and they go see as many live shows as we do now. I mean, they're all about it. So
Nice. So then your parents had, I'm sure, a great catalog of music for you to kind of cut your teeth on, I'm
yeah, they did.
gathering.
Yeah. Um, so I grew up listening to they were when they were in high school and college, they weren't listening to rock and pop of the time. They were into the funk and R&B scene of the late 70s through the early to mid 80s. And so that carried over to my childhood. I grew up listening to a lot of Lakeside, Cameo, Earth, Wind and Fire, the Gap Band, Michael Jackson, Janet Jackson, like and I listen to a lot of that stuff now. I mean, Earth, Wind and Fire, I'm a huge fan of. Stevie Wonder, like all that stuff has a really special place for me. But I do think it helped just listening to that stuff early on and honing in on the percussion and the rhythm section. I think it shaped how I play in a weird way. I can't really pin it down, but I think it helped me develop a sense of rhythm early on, and it helped me understand even as a kid, I understood, like, the importance of the bass player. Because in that music, like, you listen to Gap Band or you listen to
Yeah.
Cameo, it's like,
Yeah.
dude, those bass lines are it, It's not so much the guitar that's happening or, like, Luther Vandross was huge in my house growing up. I remember the day Luther Vandross died, because it was, like, a sad, sad day for my parents, but, all that Paul Jackson Jr. stuff that he did, like, it's it's learning that the guitar is part of the rhythm section. It's not necessarily a lead instrument, especially in that style of music. You're with the bass and the drums. And I think listening to that early on, even though I didn't understand that per se, it I think migrated into my playing for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you can hear it, and that's why I say, like, we have a lot in common because I come from the cloth of that greasy kind of, like, New Orleans funk and, like, old school, like, funk from the '70s and whatnot, and, like, if you listen I mean, were they big into Tower Power too, like, growing up? Like, did
Yeah,
you have a
yeah, Tower Power, but really it was like it was the singers. So it was Luther Vandross, Michael Jackson, Janet Jackson, um, Lakeside. I could sing the intro to Fantastic Voyage at like, 10 years old, "Hey, come on, let's take a ride, there's a party of it." My dad, if he saw me do that live would lose his mind right now. But yeah, so that it was really more about the vocalists that
Mhm.
they were into. And then the grooves, they grew up going to like clubs in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and dancing. And at that time in the late 70s, early 80s, like that was the dance music of the time. That's what, if you went to the club, that's what you were listening to. So yeah, it wasn't necessarily about the musicianship and who's playing on what. It was really just that's what they liked.
Yeah. So how old were you then when you picked up the instrument?
13 or 14. I don't remember exactly which year, but it was for Christmas. Basically, my parents had decided to I have a sister who's 5 years younger than me, and that year they had decided that they were gonna get her into guitar, and they were gonna get her guitar lessons, and so they went and they did all this research and did all this shopping, and they bought her this Yamaha classical nylon string, and, it was Christmas Eve that year, my dad was like, well, he was at Restoration Hardware at the Mall of Georgia, if anybody remembers where that is. And they had that like Strat Pack sitting on the stand. He was literally there doing last minute Christmas shopping. And it's like
At Restoration
99 bucks.
Hardware?
Yeah, of all places, Restoration Hardware.
That's so
And
weird.
yeah, it used to be different. Now it's like a bunch of really expensive furniture for really rich people. But back then in the early 2000s, it was like a bunch of like 1950s tchotchkes and weird toys and stuff like that. And yeah, he's like, "Well, I'll get him this. He'll never play it, but just to have it sitting underneath the tree so that they both got guitars for Christmas. That's their big gift. They both got guitars, whatever." And I have not stopped playing since that day, like literally since that. And I remember walking down, as a kid at Christmas or whatever, and seeing like that red Strat sitting there. I was like, oh my God, like I have a real guitar. Like, and
Yeah.
yeah, I still have it. It's in pieces. I want to rebuild it, but yeah.
Man, that's amazing, dude. I have the same. Dude, I have this little tiny, like my parents got me a 3/4 size like Yamaha electric. That was my
Hmm.
first guitar.
Hmm.
And I still have it too, man. And I like put all this stuff. I took like white out and I was huge. Well, I grew up in the early 90s, man. So like Pearl
Right.
Jam's my band. Like I
Yeah.
grew
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
That's why I play guitar. So I had like white out on the 12th fret. I put AIC for Alice in Chains and all this crap. I like destroyed that guitar. I mean, not that it
Yeah.
was a
Yeah.
great guitar, but I mean, it's like in pieces, like you're saying. Um, so did
Yeah, I,
you
I thought I would be cool at one point, and I like took it apart and I wrote "bold as love" in the cavity where the pickups were, and I was like, "Yeah, man, that's cool. That's artsy. That's a vibe." And looking back at it now, I was like, "What the hell was that about?" It's not. There's nothing original about that at all. But yeah,
Man, that's so great. Yeah, but that's what we do, man. I feel like there's one way to, kind of transition into guitarhood. You have a rite of passage. You have to do stuff, stupid stuff like that to kind of
yeah,
learn.
yeah.
Like what you're saying about tone, like not knowing tone. That stuff doesn't come till later. Do you really
No, no,
understand?
no. Yeah, it
You know
really
what I mean?
doesn't.
Like,
Yeah.
so did you like what was the amp you were playing through then at that time?
So I actually talked about this recently in a video. About a year after that, obviously I was serious about guitar, and I had saved up and bought saved up cutting lawns and bought a Taylor 110 acoustic, which I still have. And so about a year later, they bought me a Vox, the Valvetronics. It was like the 212 Valvetronics VT, whatever, like modeling amp that had
Mhm.
a tube in it. Um, and that was it. I played that from 2004 to 2010 or 11, basically, when I went to music school and went to AIM. That was my only amp. And I was playing in my local church a little bit here and there, like the youth group praise band or whatever. And anytime I would need to play electric, that's what I would play. And but I had no idea what it did. Like it had all the models, the amp models, but I was like, what is AC Brit, or what is, American? Had
Yeah,
no frame of reference for what any of that stuff meant, or the effects. Like I could understand what reverb did and delay did, but what is comp? What does comp mean? What is,
right.
all these different things? I just had no idea. So I would just mess around with it and kind of get a sound. I was listening a lot of actually the Dave Matthews Band Live at Central Park record. I was listening to a lot because Warren Haynes is on that record, and they played a
Mhm.
version of Cortez the Killer. And Warren would take, and so I would sit and play just E minor pentatonic, like on top of Warren Haynes's Cortez the Killer solo. Um, and like Pink Floyd stuff and Sublime. And yeah, that's how I learned how to play guitar.
Man. So what point did you ever like seek out? I know you said you didn't have like formal lessons in the beginning, but did you like end up being like, okay, I want to seek out somebody that's going to help mold me a little bit and push me a little harder?
I mean, so this goes into my troubled history with education. Throughout this time, I was, in high school, and just was a terrible student. I have ADHD. I talk about it on my channel from time to time. And having a learning disability, and I went to a good public school, a well-funded public school, but still, when I was in school, there was no emphasis on arts education or music education. Everything about my school was SAT, 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 and college
Mhm.
placement. That was all my school cared about. And for someone like me, I mean, you're basically a total write-off. Um, so school was really tough. I barely graduated high school. I went to college for a year. I applied to, like, no joke, I applied to about 10 colleges. I got accepted to one, and it was a 2-year, like half accredited little private school kind of thing. Went there for a year, failed out, left that first year with a GPA of below 1.0. They literally sent a letter home to my parents saying, "Hey, he can't come back next year. His GPA is too low. We won't accept him."
Man.
Um, but throughout that time, I was playing guitar, and music was the first thing I had that made sense and that clicked for me. I grew up playing sports. I sucked. I hated sports, hated every sport I played. Hated school, was terrible at school. So for me, guitar and music was the only thing I had. But I had, like I said earlier, no reference point. No one was a music. I didn't know you could make a living as a musician at 18 years old. I had no idea. But so I'd failed out of school. It's about 2008, 2009. And I was figuring something out to do. I was working 2 jobs. I was working at this outdoor store and just kind of trying to figure things out. And I had remembered this commercial that I saw when I was a junior in high school for Atlanta Institute of Music. And I only ever saw the commercial one time when I was hanging out at my best friend's house. And I remember seeing the commercial and be like, oh my God, there's a school for guitar and for music. And they'll teach you how to like be a musician and you can like do that as a job. And I was driving home from work one day and I just decided, I felt this thing that was like, oh, I'm going to look that school up. I'm going to look up AIM and I'm going to go there and I'm going to be a musician. And it was just that. I just decided like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And so I did all the work. I like found out all the information. I took my parents on a tour of the school, found out the requirements for the entrance exam. And so that was like the first guitar lessons I ever had. I went and found an AIM grad and hired him for a month of lessons, basically just to get me ready for the entrance exam. And
Man.
that was it. And so that was 2010, 11 years ago, almost to the day, because it would have been January or February when I was getting lessons. And yeah, got into AIM somehow miraculously. And that was it. AIM was my music education. That was like really my first experience. When I started at Atlanta Institute of Music, like I didn't know what a major scale was. I didn't know what a triad was. They started talking about major modes. I was like, what the hell are you talking about? Like,
Yeah.
when I took my entrance exam, the dean of the school, Knight Driscoll, who's now a good friend of mine, he was like, all right, can you play me an F triad? I was like F chord? He's like, yeah, yeah. So I played him F, in the open position. He's like, cool, now play me in a different position. I was like, well, no, this is F. This is the chord F you asked for. Like, this is where you play that,
Yeah.
So that's where I was as a player,
Man. That's crazy, dude. What's funny is like the arc of music education is so interesting, like you were talking about, like with schools not promoting the arts. It's such a bummer. And Michael Palmisano?
Mm-hmm.
He's a good friend of
Yeah.
mine. So we live really close to each other, like
Oh,
about
cool.
15, 20 minutes. We're good buds. And I was like, I wanted to talk to him about having him on to talk about education because I went to Berkeley. He
Yep.
went to Musicians Institute. And I was like, we should talk and like demystify the whole thing because it works for some people and it doesn't for other people, man.
Yeah.
Like, honestly,
Yeah.
it just doesn't. Like, you're either going to gel with it or you're not. Like,
The thing I like to say
you
about
know?
music school for me, because I get questions from time to time from young people. They're like, hey, should I go to music school? Should I go to Berkeley or wherever? And if you want to be a professional musician, a professional player, you want to do everything under that umbrella, which is gigging, writing, playing on session works, producing, but going on tour. You don't need music school to do that. You don't, especially now with things like YouTube and all these different resources to learn from people. Spend your time playing your guitar or whatever your instrument is. Listen to a ton of music, try and absorb as much as you can, and find a really great teacher. That's all you need to do. But for someone like me, music school I couldn't be doing what I'm doing now without AIM because, like I said, I had no reference point. I had nowhere to learn this stuff from. Um,
Mhm.
and so what AIM did was not make me a good guitar player. When I left AIM 10 years ago and I listened to what I was playing and doing at the time, like, Jesus Christ, I was a terrible guitar player. I still think I'm a terrible guitar player, but um,
No.
I AIM didn't teach me how to play guitar. AIM taught me how to learn music, and it gave me the tools to go out and start actually learning music. So I like to think that my actual music education started when I got out of AIM and I started trying to like hustle for gigs and play live, and like the first few sessions that I would play on, which like friends of mine were producing and things like that.
Mhm.
It gave me the tools necessary to like get my foot in the door and actually start learning. So for me, yes, music school I needed it, but
Mhm.
I could have done the same thing had I gotten a teacher at 14. You know, had I had a really great teacher and a really great mentor at 14, I'd be leaps and bounds better as a guitar player as I am now. That's for sure.
Well, you know, I think it's what's cool about it too is like, and what you're describing is what I experience is like, if you go to the right school and you have the right mindset, it's all about like not sugarcoating what the industry is and like sprinkling fairy dust, thinking you're going to have all these amazing dreams come true. It's like, no, the industry is harsh. The music industry is
Yeah.
very harsh. I mean, like you have to like know what you're getting into, and if you prepare yourself and you educate yourself on how to navigate the heavy seas, that's what it's important. You know, that's when you get the benefits and you reap the benefits. At least for me, that's what I experienced too. So it sounds
Yeah.
similar, you know.
Yeah, the music
Um,
industry, like if anyone's listening to this or watching this and they're like, I want to be a professional musician, great, do it. Highly recommend. But it's not easy, man. I spent years living at home, scraping money together. It, it's it's really, really tough. It's not impossible. But you have to have a strong business mind. You've got to be You've gotta be good, not necessarily at your instrument, but you've gotta have good people skills. You've gotta be a fast learner. You've gotta have some good hard skills. Um, like, for myself as a player, dude, I'm not fast, I'm not technical. There are like, my assistant Chris just graduated from Kennesaw University with the jazz guitar degree. He can, like, physically play circles around me. But the stuff that I got hired for and the stuff that I have been, made my career out of was not that. It was I had good tone. I understood how to write good guitar parts. I could
mhm.
play the songs well. I showed up on time. I was a good hang. I could be the type of person that you wanted to spend 15 hours in a van with at a time. Like those are the things that make you a pro player. It's not like, how fast can you play or how many different ways can you harmonize autumn leaves or whatever, right? It's
Right. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it's well, and it keep in mind too, like I'm speaking from just my perspective on 10 years in the industry. There's so many different ways to do this and so many different paths. Um, and I would also point out that if someone's listening to this or watching this, don't compare yourself to me or to you and our paths and how we came up in this because the reality is, man, there's an infinite amount of ways to get into this industry and to make a living in this industry. You just have to have the heart for it, and you have to have the passion for it and the drive to keep at it, even when it sucks, which is not, you know, not all that
It
uncommon,
happens.
unfortunately.
It
Yeah,
happens, man. Well, yeah, you're totally right and spot on with that stuff. And, you know, I love this quote. I love the whole comparison is the thief of joy. I
yeah.
love that because it's words to live by and what we do. And like you've been doing, how long have you been doing the YouTube thing?
4 years. I started
Years.
January of 2018. My New Year's resolution was 10,000 subscribers on YouTube.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And then and in the first year, you mean, like, of doing
In
it
the
when you
first
get
year. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. In the first year.
cool. Nice. So, do you feel like when you started that, you had a clear vision, like, in terms of, like, what your goals were in terms of, like, "I'm gonna post X amount of videos a week. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do that." What was your plan when you started doing it?
Yeah, so the YouTube thing for me was an interesting thing. I had been watching YouTube basically since I started music school. I love YouTube since 2010. That was like my primary way of consuming media. Um, and I had tried to start YouTube back in like 2014, 2015 when Casey Neistat first came on the scene. I was really inspired, like a lot of people, by Casey Neistat's work. Just the fact that you could like every day you could make something that told a story and shared a perspective and you could be creative and like put that thing out every day and it would connect with people just blew my mind. Like it I never thought about doing something like that before. So at the time I was interning for Rick Beato and working at his studio. We were working on sessions and doing all kinds of that stuff. And through that, I got hired on a gig in Nashville and I was on tour 3 weeks a month. Um, and so then right around 2016, the production stuff's kind of started slowing down for Rick, and I convinced him to start making YouTube videos. I helped him shoot and edit his first few videos. In fact, his channel trailer, if you go to Rick Beato's channel right now, the trailer video I shot and edited and
Nice.
he's reading from a teleprompter from a script that I wrote
Yes.
that day. Like we sat there and like tapped this thing because he couldn't talk on camera at the time very well. He's if he ever sees this, he'll never let me hear the end of it. But yeah, he couldn't talk on camera very well. So we had to like script out everything he would say. And I would sit there and I was basically producing his first few videos. And obviously he took it and turned it into the monster that it is now. But so I had seen what success could look like on YouTube because at that time Rick had like 100,000 or 200,000 subscribers. And my gig in Nashville had just ended. I was touring with a band called Muddy Magnolias. And after about 4 years with them, they split up. And I was like, okay, this is it. I just got married. We were living in Decatur in Atlanta. And I was like, I'm going to do YouTube. I want to do this. I want to make stuff. I love videography. I love photography. I love video editing. And I want to start a YouTube channel about guitar and about music and educating. Basically, I want to make videos that I could have watched when I was 14 and trying to learn music. And that's where it started for me.
How did you get into photography and stuff? Like, where did that passion begin?
On a whim, man. In 2012, like I just through YouTube, actually, I was watching these
Really?
videos of these photographers. Frono's Photo. Like, I don't know if you know any of his stuff. He's still on YouTube killing it. But I used to watch his videos and um watch this guy Kai W like review cameras and stuff. And I was so fascinated by like cameras and photography and videography. The fact that you could like take a camera and make something that was like cinematic and capture it. So in 2012, I was about to go on my first tour ever up the East Coast. We started in Florida and went up to New York City. And it was in December. And so I took some money I had saved up. I took a little bit of like Christmas money that I used to get from, my family. And I went and bought my first camera. It was like $700, dude, which was just all the money I had. And I bought it and my my parents at the time were like, why are you buying a camera? You don't need a camera. Like that's such a stupid waste of money. And I was like, no, I want to do this. And I actually vlogged that whole first tour without even realizing what vlogging was at the time. I just shot the whole thing and I still have the footage somewhere on a hard drive. But I just loved capturing stuff like shooting out the window of the van or experiencing my first time in New York City. I have all of that stuff on footage. Um, and yeah, I caught the bug, man. I wanted to learn about it. And that's how I got into shooting Rick's stuff was because I was the only guy he knew that knew how to work a camera and set up a light, you know?
That's awesome, man. Dude, yeah, because your stuff, it's funny. I can't remember like what demo I was shooting, but I was like I was talking to somebody, I was like, dude, I can't do what Rhett and RJ do. They make things look way too good. I'm just gonna do a 2-camera thing. One's on the pedal, one's on me, and I'm kind of like the gear man dude type thing where I just like shoot from the hip. I always do
Oh,
one
gear
take.
man, dude.
I just put on a camera, one take, and that's
Yeah, yeah,
what you
yeah.
get. What you get. But you have such a great eye for how you do things. You can tell that you have like studied that kind of like cinematography in a way. Like you can tell, man. It's
Thanks,
obvious that
man.
you have a love for that stuff.
I do love it. And I respect the craft enough to know that I am nowhere near as talented as the people that actually do that stuff. Here in Atlanta, the film industry has like blown up over the last 10 years. I mean, there's a lot of my
Marvel.
best friends. Yeah, a lot of my best friends. In fact, my best friend Philip is working on a movie right now, boom opping. But yeah, so like I love visuals, and I think it's just how my brain is wired. Having ADHD, reading stuff is difficult for me. Like I have a really hard time with reading comprehension. I have a really hard, but sight and sound and like seeing something, like I'm a visual learner. If I can watch somebody do something, I can do it, generally speaking. Or if I hear something musically, like I can usually pick it out relatively quickly. So it just, yeah, the fact that you can go to a place and capture a feeling of what it's like to be in that place, and you can shape the feeling for the viewer based on how you capture the place is really beautiful to me. It's yeah. So
Yeah,
kind of a
dude.
esoteric thing, but still.
Yeah, but man, it really does. I mean, it's like watching a little movie every time you post something, and it's fun.
Thanks, man.
And then in a way, like, because I'm a big movie nerd too. Like, I love
Right,
movies, and I'm a huge like all these pop Funkos behind me are all Marvel. Besides the middle one, that's Pearl Jam, wherever that
right,
is.
right.
But so like I love movies, and I've always been a huge fan of cinema and films growing up.
Mhm.
And like, what's your favorite? Speaking of, what's your favorite film score?
Oh god, it's gotta be a John Williams score.
Yeah, right.
Star Wars was my life growing up when I was a kid, so I have to say a Star Wars, like, the original theme. Or the score for Shadows of the Empire. Did you ever play Shadows of the Empire on N64? Like,
Heck yeah, dude.
one of the most difficult games ever. There's the score for that game, which features, I think, I can't remember if John Williams scored that game or if they took some of John Williams' score for that game and did their own score. But like, what was it? The Trash Planet level where you're like riding those rail cars down and you have to fight IG-88 at the end of the
Oh
level.
my god, I forgot.
Am I unlocking like a core memory for you right now?
Yeah,
Because that,
dude.
yeah, that was like the scariest level. But that theme of that level, which I believe is a John Williams score, if I'm not mistaken, someone can correct me. Um,
Yeah,
yeah, dude, that Shadows of the Empire stuff, man, that stuff goes pretty hard. But yeah, that
dude.
or I like it's a little cliche, but I really enjoy there's two actually, the Hans Zimmer's work on Interstellar, and then the Book of Eli. I
Mm.
don't remember who scored Book of Eli. Um, but
That movie is so freaking good, man.
that's
Denzel.
amazing, man.
Oh,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was somewhere traveling and that was on and it was super late and I'm like, "Well, I'm gonna be up until 3 in the morning now."
Yeah. Yeah, man.
It's so good, man. Um,
Yeah. That
speaking of
theme that they have of like
N64,
the root, the second, fourth, third, da, 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 that just goes throughout the whole movie. It's so simple, but God, it's beautiful, man. It's so
yeah,
beautiful.
there's some killer motifs in that whole thing. My kid, I have a trunk, in my basement that's full of, like, memory stuff, and my
Mhm.
kid was in there. She's gonna be 11 soon. And she opened it up, and then there was an N64 in there,
Yeah.
and I was like, "Dude, we can probably hook this up." I had GoldenEye and I had, like, Ocarina of Time, and I was like, "Dude,
Yeah.
we got snowed in." I was like, "We're about to have a good time." But, like, and people, like, right after that, all these people started putting up these TikTok videos of how gangster the GoldenEye theme is when you put in
Yeah,
the
yeah,
polish.
yeah. Right.
You remember how,
It's
like,
it's pretty great,
oh,
man. Dude, I
it's
remember
like
the first time I played GoldenEye. Like, these are gonna be the stories we tell our grandkids, like, for me, my grandparents talk about how because they grew up in really rural South Carolina, so for them, it's like they were in high school when they got, electricity, that kinda thing. Um,
right.
but, yeah, we're gonna talk about, like, man, I remember the first time I ever played a first person shooter, it was GoldenEye, and we played, Slap Fight and all these different game modes and stuff. Yeah.
God, slap fight. I totally forgot about that. Dude, yeah, that game, I remember being in my dorm room in college and I mean, for hours, hours, dude,
Yep.
like 8 hours, like on a Saturday with you and your friends, 4 people just hammering it out.
Yeah,
Oh my
man.
God. Dude, I wanted to ask you because we're running out of time. Um, so in high school, were you in a band? Like, did you have a band with your friends and stuff?
No, man. Nobody
No?
nobody I knew in high school played music or was, like, interested in guitar or music at all, which I guess looking
Damn.
back is kinda weird, but yeah, I was the only person I knew, even of my best friends that was like, my best friend growing up, Andrew, and I would listen. He was a huge, like, Red Hot Chili Peppers fan or whatever, and we'd listen to, like, Outkast and stuff, but, I was the only, like, guitar player that I knew growing up.
Man, you were really on your own, man, for
Yeah, I
real.
really was. I had
Wow.
no point of reference for anything, really.
Dude, that's crazy, Rhett. Man, and so that was were you in South Carolina or were you in Georgia at that
Mm-mm.
time?
No, I was in Georgia. Yeah, North
Okay.
Georgia, like
Okay.
Duluth area.
Okay. Man, that's crazy. So you really you had a crazy path to walk. Like you really were all on your own kind of putting the pieces together of the puzzle. That's nuts.
Yeah, I think so. And um, like again, looking back, if time travel were a thing, I think I would just go back and talk to myself and be like, dude, go get guitar lessons. Like find a good guitar teacher, and just at
Mm,
14, and just find someone for two reasons. One, someone that could actually teach me the mechanics of like understanding the fretboard earlier and breaking out of like the first position earlier. And two, someone that could have showed me what to listen to, because I really didn't listen to any jazz until I was 20 years old, and
Mhm.
one of my teachers at AIM, Trey Wright, played Kind of Blue for us for the first time. And I was like,
Oh, yeah,
oh
it's
my God, this record is like moving me to tears, basically. If I'd have heard that at 14, or I would have heard like Robin Ford, or the one player that I did kind of stumble into when I was like 15 or 16 was Derek Trucks. And that
yeah.
was because we went to go see Eric Clapton in Atlanta. It was like 2006 or 7 when he was on tour. It was like, and dude, I looking back now, I saw one of the best rhythm sections ever. It was Steve Jordan and Willie Weeks. So Steve Jordan on drums, Willie Weeks on
What?
bass. And I had no idea who the guys were. I was like, man, this band sounds really good. And then it was Doyle Bramhall, obviously, on guitar, because Doyle's been with Eric forever. And then Derek Trucks.
Yeah.
And we had no idea. It was like, who is this like blonde haired kid? At the time he was 28. And just blowing our minds. Even my dad was like, "Holy, can I cuss on
Mm.
this show?"
Oh, yeah, sure, yeah.
I was like, "Holy
That's
shit, who is this guy?" So then
yeah.
that year, for New Year's Eve, Derek Trucks band was playing the Fox Theater here in Atlanta, and so me and my mom and my dad, at like 15 or 16, went to go see Derek Trucks band, and it was Enrico Scott on drums, Todd Smalley, another AIM grad actually, on bass. Um, and then this was before Tedeschi Trucks band, but Susan was there, and Susan came out and played. North Mississippi All Stars opened the show, and that was like that show, that New Year's Eve show. It must have been like 2006, maybe. Uh, that was like my first real sort of guitar awakening. Like, oh,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
need to like get in the shed, because this is some other stuff that I've never seen before. Yeah.
Oh,
Like,
dude, 100%. When I first heard his version of Afro Blue,
yeah, oh God. Oh my God.
for forget about it. I was just like, "Hold on a second, this is a jazz standard? Like, what?"
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Or his
it's
version of Green Sleeves, like the
oh,
Derek Trucks band version of Green Sleeves. It goes, dude, if you guys don't know that, I think it's on YouTube. Go check it out. I think there's like a live club version. Actually, I think the version on YouTube was tracked here in Atlanta in like 2002 or 3 at the 5 spot in Little 5 Points, if I'm not mistaken. And it's heavy. Like they go in
mhm.
on that,
Oh, yeah,
you
totally,
know.
dude. And they're sounding better than ever, man. I was just we my band just went down to Nashville to record a single, and Gabe Dixon
Oh
played
yeah.
keys, played organ on it. I'll
I know
send it to you.
Gabe. Dude,
Yeah,
I did a
he's a
short
great
tour
guy,
in
man.
Wisconsin with Gabe like 6 years ago. It was with Noah Guthrie, who Noah is one of my best friends I played with for 10 years. And Noah and Gabe did a duo tour together where they were like both headlining, and they were riding in Gabe's minivan. And then me and the drummer Ian came up and met up with them, and we did like 4 or 5 shows. It was just Gabe and then Noah and Ian and I. And
Oh,
actually, I saw Gabe backstage at that Crossroads Festival, and I walked up to him and was like, dude, I haven't seen you in a few years, but he remembered me. He was super nice. And my God, what a monster musician Gabe Dixon is.
dude, I was sitting behind him while he was tracking just because I wanted to watch, because I play keys too, so I wanted to watch
Right.
him, and he just has this musicality that just comes out of him that's
Hmm.
just not right. It's just like,
He's one of the people that you see from, and this, it only happens, I think, a handful of times in your life where you're just like, this is true talent. This is true talent.
oh,
It-
man. And he
it-
sings like a bird. It's just
yeah.
like, oh my god. And we
Yeah.
were in the Wood Brothers studio recording, which is my
Yeah.
favorite freaking band, and
Yeah.
Jono was
Nice.
there. Jono was producing it, and I'm just like, "I can't believe where I am right now. I can't believe this." It's just like and I'm 42, like, I'm a grown
Right.
ass man, and I'm sitting there like, "How did this happen?" Like, it's a lot. I put a lot of work into organizing it, but, like, when you see people like that, and then Jono played on one of my songs, like, we did, like, a live of one of he played organ. He's a
Hmm.
crushing keys player too.
Right.
So I'm just like, these cats are just like, they just exude, they just must grow up like just music is in them. You know what I mean? It's not.
I think it's just like you spend enough time doing it, eventually, yes, certain people are just genetically more talented, right? Like
Yeah.
Gabe Dixon just was blessed by the gods of
Yeah.
keys. and he just has the genetic makeup of someone that is just a monster musician. But it's also the fact that he's just spent a lot of time playing keys and a lot of time listening to music. Like the listening thing is huge. Um, I feel like we don't give it enough credit when it comes to talking about practicing and honing your craft. Just listening to stuff is massive. That's mostly what I do now. I mean, as a guitar player, you know, I'm still learning and progressing and getting better, but I see myself now moving more towards like a producer role. That's really what I want to do. Like in the next 10 years of my career is move more into production and songwriting. That's why I'm building a studio in my basement. And I realize now that looking back, even when I was a kid listening to music, I'm a guitar player because that's what got me into music. But for me, my passion is not guitar. My passion is just music and
Mhm.
everything that entails, from like the gear that we use, like the pedals and the amps and the speakers and all that cool shit. And then like, oh my God, the way that uh Nate Smith played that just like kick and snare thing on the Fearless Flyers thing is great. Or the way that Tim LaFave played bass on that one Tedeschi Trucks track. Like you look at I tend to listen to music more holistically and think about music more holistically uh now than I
Mm.
did when I was younger, I think.
Yeah, that's amazing. And that's the way it should be, man. Like 100%. Mario, my buddy Mario said, can I emphasize this enough? Both of you together nerding out is absolutely fantastic. Much love to both of you.
Nice, man.
I wanted so a lot of people that are on this channel and people that are subscribers of yours know that we love gear. We love
Mhm.
messing with stuff. We love getting into it. I want to ask you let's think about 2021. What was your least favorite piece of gear that you played through?
In 2021 or just in
Yeah.
general? Well,
Well, let's think about it could be in general, but I was thinking about from the last year.
okay. Oh, it's tough. It's tough because honestly, we're kind of in the age now where like everything's good.
I
Like
know.
really,
It's tough.
if
Yeah.
you really think about it, take any piece of gear for guitar players, right? Very rarely do we come across something now where it's just objectively bad, where it just objectively doesn't sound good, it doesn't do what it's supposed to do, it's overpriced. I feel like, everyone has their preferences and everyone has what they think is worth the money or not worth the money. But for me, I don't know, man. Like,
It's so subjective too. It's like like I like the Walrus ACS1 better than the Iridium, for
right,
instance.
but
But some people love the Iridium,
realistically,
you
yeah,
know?
but realistically, it's like you're so splitting hairs there, right?
Yeah.
Like, does that mean that the Iridium sucks and is a piece of trash? No. It's just
No.
that's what I'm talking about. Like, maybe honestly, like maybe it's just the Tube Screamer, because I think that the stock tube. In fact, yeah, Chivalry in the chat right there. Yeah, the Tube Screamer, dude. Look,
You have
I
such
get,
a hate relationship with that thing. It's so funny. I love it.
but here's why. Okay, here's why. And I knew this would come up at some point because it's kind of becoming
It's
like
terrible.
my thing. He's the guy that thinks Tube Screamers suck.
Yeah.
I think Tube Screamers are overrated. Is my problem with them. As just an overdrive pedal, I think it's fine. Is it my favorite style of overdrive? No. But because of the people that have used Tube Screamers, i.e. Stevie Ray Vaughan and John Mayer and whoever, there's this cult around the Tube Screamer, and some people have it in their head, and I know because I've seen it in the comment sections of my video about the Tube Screamer, that like people believe that Stevie Ray Vaughan sounded like Stevie Ray Vaughan because of the Tube Screamer. It's like, no, that's not how that works at all. John Mayer doesn't sound like John Mayer because he had a Tube Screamer in his rig during the Continuum era. No.
Mm-mm.
And the thing about the Tube Screamer is, I think objectively, if you're playing a rig that is anything other than a single coil guitar into a blackface Fender amp, the Tube Screamer sounds too mid-rangey, too dull, and just completely shifts your tone into something that, in my opinion, is not good. And in my
Mhm.
video, that point was proven because the number one comment, I got a lot of hate on that video. And the number one comment I got was, who does this guy? He doesn't even know what he's talking about. He's playing a Les Paul into a high watt. Obviously, you know if you knew anything, you know you're not supposed to play a tube screamer into that kind of rig. Well, wait a second. I thought if the tube screamer is the greatest overdrive pedal of all time, then why can't I play a Les Paul and a high watt and have it sound good?
It's
Oh,
fair.
because it only quote unquote only sounds good through with a Strat through a black face Fender or a silver face Fender. Like it's yeah. I just think
I
the tube screamer does one thing, and the one thing that it does is not that great, and everyone holds it to this high regard because of Stevie Ray Vaughan. And the reality is,
Mhm.
Stevie would have sounded like Stevie with or without the tube screamer.
Right. Well, what's the overdrive on your board right now that you really like your go-to on your board right now?
I have several. The Olympus from Mythos. Shout out to my
Oh,
good
yeah,
friend Zach and
that's good.
co-podcaster Zach from Mythos. Um, the Greer Lightspeed is that's a Hall of Fame pedal for me. I think Nick's design and his take on that pedal is just chef's kiss, like phenomenal.
I've never
Um,
tried that. He's actually
oh
on
my
my show next
god,
week. He's
dude,
gonna be on
you
next week,
need
Rhett.
yeah, you need a Lightspeed. I
Okay,
genuinely believe the Lightspeed is one of those pedals that will work with just about everyone's rig, um, and you will enjoy what it does.
okay.
Um, what else? I've been playing the Gladio quite a bit recently. It does a cool thing. You know, there's a lot of those Dumble in a box things. You know, Mason, my friend Mason from Vertex, has been doing that for a while. There's a lot of people that are getting into that kind of thing, and the Dumble sound is cool. I like what it does. I don't use it a lot, but because I tend to think it for at least for what I do, I think the Dumble sound is a little overdone at this point. Says the guy with a Dumble knockoff right over his shoulder. Um, and then
What's
the
that
Timmy, man.
Marshall?
That's a Plexi. That's the 1959 hand wired Plexi.
Okay,
1959 meaning the model number, not the year, which is a little confusing. But yeah, that's the
yeah,
100-watt Plexi.
nice. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Dude, I got to play through what year was it? I think it was a '69 Super Bass, like, a couple
Oof.
weeks ago. Dude, that amp, wow. Like,
What was it going through 412?
yes, it was. Yes, it
Yeah.
was.
Did it
And
do the thud thing, like the concussive thing where it hits you in the chest? Okay.
the
Yeah.
overtones, specific notes, how there's those overtones, those big bloomy overtones.
Right. And the ghosting thing that it does too, where you hear that 60 cycle hum coming through.
Yeah, it
Dude,
was good.
there's a thing that happens when you're playing a big amp through a big cab and you're moving air. Um, it's it's a magical experience. And look, I love things like the aux. I love like the Capture X I use all the time. They're great tools. Um, and modelers, like I'm a fan of all this stuff, but there is something that's lost when you don't have the amp and the guitar in the same space. Because
Mhm.
when I interviewed Dave Friedman on this a couple years ago on his thoughts on modelers, and he said the same thing. He was like, they're great tools. They solve a problem. They do a lot of great things, but the guitar and the amp are like a symbiotic organism. They feed off of each other. The air moving out of the cabinet is interacting with the guitar and the pickups, which is then interacting with the amplifier. And it's not just getting feedback, like they're actually interacting with one another. And you can feel this like when you remove the cabinet from the situation or you are playing direct or with headphones on, there is something that is lacking there. And the other side of that is when you're playing a big amp with big speakers in the room, it's a magical thing.
Dude, it is, and that was my first experience ever doing that with a Marshall, and I'm a 2-Rock guy. I have a 2-Rock Studio Signature that I absolutely love and was my midlife crisis purchase that I sold all my
Yeah.
crap. But this amp specifically was owned by Paul Reed Smith,
Ah,
and since I'm in Maryland, there's a
yeah, yeah, yeah.
shop that I go to all the time. Paul is friends with this shop, so he like sold my buddy Ryan this amp, but it belonged to another very, very famous guitarist. I don't know if I'm allowed to say who it was, but Paul bought it from him.
Right.
And I didn't know this, and maybe you know this, but like the whole thing with those amps, you know how sometimes people will like feel like the top end is blowing your head off if you're sitting in the
Hmm.
front? Well, apparently, Paul was talking about like the specific grill cloth. He was like, when they were building that Hendrix
Yeah.
amp, that grill cloth that was used, that's that period, like cuts out those harsh
Yeah,
highs.
the basket weave, it does. It
Yeah,
really
I didn't
does
know that.
because high-end frequencies are the most susceptible to material changes. So like when people think they're gonna like soundproof their room and they slap Oralex on the wall, really all that's doing, or even this foam behind me here, like these panels behind me here, um, that's not doing anything really for the low end of your sound. It's capturing and taming a lot of the high end and upper mid range.
Mm,
If you think about low end frequencies, you know, why is it that when the Honda Civic that's got four subwoofers in the trunk, when it drives by, you can hear the bass line of whatever songs? Because low end frequencies are omnidirectional and there's a lot of power behind them, and they penetrate really well. But high end frequencies don't. And that really, really high end, on a guitar amp like that Marshall, that like 8K, that 9K kind of thing that's coming out of the speaker, the middle of the speaker, the dust cap. Yeah, like the grill cloth is taming that. It's knocking that down a little bit. And the type of grill cloth that you're using paired with the type of speakers in the cabinets. I mean, we're talking about one element of
mhm.
hundreds that's influencing the sound. Um, it does have an effect. Those basket weave cabs, like they sound different than like a normal, like, I don't know, 1960B or whatever.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like all the little things make such a big difference, and that's what I appreciate, like, about Paul Reed Smith is, like, how much energy they put into those things in terms of and like, at times, I'm like, "Is it overkill to do that?" But, like, it's intentional, and it really does, like it's a passion, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
But I was shocked about that when I learned that. I was just like, "I never even thought about that, man." That's, like, it makes sense, of course,
Right.
but I never in a million years would have thought that, like,
Hmm.
ever, ever.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, Rhett, let me ask you, are you so just to getting back to like other bands that you play with, because I wanted to talk really fast about that. So Noah, are you still playing with Noah?
Oh yeah. Hmm.
Even though you guys
I
are you're
I
not
think
touring
I
right now, I'm gathering.
no, I mean, I'll probably end up playing with Noah Guthrie till the day I die. I mean, those guys have become like my best friends in the world, and I really love the music that Noah writes. I genuinely, I just love being a part of that project, and even if there's no money in it, I will still play with those guys just because I love them.
Yeah. And the music sounds great, and like his voice is just so good.
Oh yeah,
Like
he's stupid talented. It's like it's crazy. And then to hear his voice and to hear how he writes and the songs that he puts together, it's like Jesus, man. Like it's just crazy.
yeah, you guys sound great as a band. You really do.
Thanks, man.
Um, what other projects do you have going on besides Noah? Like, I know you had your thing going on when you guys were doing live streams. Are you still thinking
Yeah.
about doing that again too?
Yeah, so that was Deacon Night. And yeah, it's funny. It's really encouraging and really discouraging at the same time because I get asked about Deacon Night all the time, which is encouraging because it's like, okay, cool. People were into what we were doing, but it's also discouraging because the four members of that band right now are all spread out. So the keys player and the singer, Jamie Porti, um, his main gig is with Thomas Rhett, big commercial country guy. And, they go out and play arenas and stuff like that. Phil, the bass player, is boom opping and starting a YouTube channel right now. And then Chad is playing with a lot of other people and doing a lot of work on the side. So my goal with Deacon Night right now is to finish my studio this year and then bring those guys back together and do some kind of project, whether it's an EP or a full length might be a little difficult to get together, but I think about that band and when I look back at those live streams that we did in 2020, um, I don't think been I've never played better than I did with those guys. And it makes sense because I picked those guys for very specific reasons. Like that's my basically dream band. Um,
Mhm.
And with those, the four of us in a room and with our engineer, Andy McDonald, like running the whole thing. Um, yeah, it was like my happy place musically. And so I want to get that group back together just for the selfish reason of that, like being able to play, play
Yeah.
with them again.
Dude, it's like it fills your soul, man. I'm sure you were just like, and especially at a time when like you and the rest of those guys probably needed it. you
Yeah,
know?
we definitely needed it. We all needed it, and it was cool too because I got to. We started that in the early-ish days of the pandemic. It took about 6 months to get that stream up and running. I mean, the logistical undertaking, um, because I had a very clear vision of what I wanted that stream to be, which was like basically I wanted it to sound like a mixed album live. I wanted multi-camera setup. I wanted it to look really nice, to sound really nice, and we accomplished that. But it took
A
about
village.
$15,000 in about 6 months worth of work to put that
Woo!
together.
Man,
And we
man.
had sponsors, and I got the community to like help crowdfund the thing basically.
Mhm.
Um, but the cool thing for me was like, you know, I was okay during the pandemic because I had the YouTube channel and I was able to work and continue to make money. But in those early days, my musician friends, like it was pretty scary for a lot of people. And so I think the biggest thing I'm proud of outside of the music that we got to do was I got to pay those guys. Like the donations that we got from the people watching the stream went to paying the musicians and paying Andy
Yeah,
and everybody.
that's dope.
And that was the community that did that. It was like the people watching the show donating and buying merch and doing all that stuff.
Mm.
So that was really, really cool to see.
Man, good on you, dude. That's so awesome. That's so great. Let's do the lightning round get down, but really quick, Jeremy Shepard has the snarky comment.
Jeremy, what's up, man?
He's a great dude too. And
Yeah.
that's the thing I love about this, man, is like I've only been doing this for about a year. So I'm a newbie in the world of YouTube and whatnot, about a year and a half. Um, but I just love getting to talk to people like you and getting to know Jeremy and like Josh was on the show. We did a Josh Scott and I did a whole thing with the discography of Pearl Jam. We went through every album. We talked about
Yeah. Yeah,
our
you and
favorite
Josh,
songs.
you share the Pearl Jam thing for sure. Yeah.
Dude, and we're born on the same day, man. We have the same birthday. I found out
Oh,
that out
really?
that day. I was like, "Holy crap, dude!" And I'm a
That's
couple years
cool.
older than him, but I'm like, "Dude, this was meant to be." Let's get into
That's
the
cool.
nitty gritty with Pearl Jam. But
Josh has become one of my closest friends in the like guitar and music world. I have, you know, people see us like we joke around and beef online a lot about like the slide tone thing or whatever. But genuinely, Josh Scott is he's 7 or 8 years older than me, I think. I really look up to Josh as a person and as a business owner and as just like the thing I respect about him is he has such a thirst for learning and for knowledge that never ends. He's so curious all the time. He's whatever it is he gets into, whether it's film photography or pedals or whatever, YouTube. Like keep in mind with the JHS channel, like that's one of several things that Josh Scott does at a
mhm,
very high level. Like run one of the biggest pedal companies in the world, run one of the best YouTube channels in the world. He's going around and collecting some really important information about the history of music and the history of pedals and gear that nobody else is really doing. He's writing books. Like I have such a respect for Josh Scott and what he does. If I could be 1/10 of as driven and as disciplined as he's been, I will be happy with that.
yeah. I mean, what he does and like his like spirit and the way he like
Oh
comes
my god.
across, it's so infectious, man.
It's
It's just
so
like,
good. He's
oh
such a
god,
good guy to hang out with. It's awesome.
oh man. All right, Rhett, you ready to do this lightning round? Get down.
Oh, we didn't answer Jeremy's question. Pedals and musical too.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah.
I haven't heard anything, but as I understand it, I mean, yeah, there's plans to do it, and I'm in. I mean, I had such a fun time last year doing it, so yeah, sign me up.
Yeah, that was brilliant. When I when I saw that, I was like, "This is the most brilliant and ridiculous." This is like if Monty Python was like a, like a bunch of musicians. Not those guys were musicians, but like as nerdy as Josh.
But that's the
Like,
thing, though. It's like that came from an idea from his daughter in the kitchen one night, and then he just did it. Like he's one of those guys where it's like, you have an idea, okay, do it, just do it,
yeah,
and he did. Like, but what if we did a musical about pedals? And then they did. And it was nuts and it was crazy. And I'm so glad I got to be a part of it because it was one of my favorite experiences of the last 10 years.
that's so great. You guys should do the next one should just be about the clown and just like
Well,
putting to bed.
as I understand it, and I hope I'm not giving too much away, but I think they want to do by the decades. So the Pedals the Musical
Ooh.
1 was the 60s, and
Mhm.
as I understand it, 2 will be the 70s. And if you think about like what happened in the 70s, you've got MXR. I think Boss like first started coming on the scene. So there's like some pretty heavy things that happened that you could write a musical about. And I will gladly take my role as the MD for Pedals the Musical too.
Oh, dude, that's so fun. I cannot wait to see that. All right. You ready to do this thing?
Let's
All
do
right.
it.
We're going to put on a metronome at a cool altitude of 112 BPM
All right.
just for some suspense. Now, here's what we're going to do. Right? I'm going to ask you 10 questions. You can rapid fire answer them if you want, or if you
All right.
want to explain your answers. I love hearing explanations as to why, but you do not have to do that.
Okay.
First question is always the same. Lennon or McCartney?
McCartney. I think McCartney's work. I mean, and not to say, please don't hear me say that Lennon sucks or anything like that. I just prefer McCartney for his work with Wings, his solo work, and the fact that he's still gone on to be as prolific as he is. Also, shout out to the RSA 23 behind me, Rusty Anderson's signature amp, plays with McCartney. Also, shout out to Gabe Dixon, played with McCartney
Uh-huh.
for a while as well. I really think and watching, I haven't watched all the Beatles documentary yet, but just watching like McCartney work and watching him kind of like run that whole thing was like, yeah,
Yeah.
McCartney's my guy.
I would high five you super hard right now if we're in the same room. He's my guy too, man. I have like 2 pictures of him on my wall over here.
Mhm.
All right. Salty or sweet?
Salty.
Okay.
Yep.
Gibson Explorer or Flying V?
Explorer. Yeah, the Explorer, because the Edge, first of all. I skipped over it earlier, but part of what made me want to like pursue guitar and think about guitar was the documentary It Might Get Loud, because that
Mhm.
came out in 2008, right around that whole time where I was trying to figure things out, and I watched It Might Get Loud with Jack White, Jimmy Page, and the Edge, and was like, holy crap, that's it for me. And I love U2. So yeah,
All right.
Explorer.
Great. Zip up hoodie or pullover hoodie?
Pullover.
Who's the better pilot? Han or Lando?
All right. No, this is a good one because Lando, I mean, the Falcon originally was Lando's, right? And he lost it. I got to go with Han because Han, his character arc in A New Hope, I mean, he really like he stepped up and became who he really was. You know, someone who cared about people and had left his old ways behind when he decided to come back and help out the rebellion and help out Luke at the end of A New Hope. I got to go with Han.
All right. Fair enough. Fair enough. Hey, did you watch Boba Fett?
Yeah,
Yeah, I
I'm
know.
not. I
Well,
can't. I just couldn't finish it.
well,
The goofy Vespa chase scene that just was like, I'm done. I can't do it
here's the
anymore.
thing though, Rhett. You have to trust me on this because I felt the same way, but then something changed. The tide changed and it got good. It got real good. The last 3 episodes.
That episode really upset me. Like
Me too.
it was like we were watching it over dinner, Tilly and I were, and I was like, I can't do this. I can't do it anymore. I was like, this is exactly what I was afraid of when Disney bought Star Wars. This exact scene is what I was afraid of. And here we are.
Yeah.
I can't do it. I'm out.
It was not good. I would agree with you, but you got to trust me. The finale and I think it's the last 3 episodes were amazing.
And I
So,
do have a lot of respect for Jon Favreau as a director, and I do respect him and his love of the franchise and of Star Wars. I hear you, so
yeah,
maybe I'll give it another shot.
yeah, I'm the same way though. Trust me, I didn't like it the first half of it. All right, here's one. Would you rather break your collarbone again,
Oh God!
or headline a gig with only an amp and a tube screamer?
Oh, totally headline a gig with an amp and a tube screamer. I've done that, and it's way better than breaking your collarbone. Oh my God! Are you kidding me? Dude, I have 9 titanium screws and a titanium plate in my collarbone here.
Oh man. So
Do
you
you know
went
what the
over your
worst?
handlebars on that
Well,
one?
no. So I was jumping and I was just warming up. It was like on a beginner jump line, and I hit this tabletop, which is way too much speed on my bike, and I overshot and I landed to flat. And when I was in the air, I started to like the bike started tilting over. So when I landed, the front end of the bike washed out, and I went down on my right side super hard. And I
Oh.
immediately knew, like, I basically went like this when I got up, and I felt my bones go in my
Oh
arm.
god, dude. I would have
Yeah,
barfed as soon
so
as I heard
I would headline a gig with no amp before I broke my collarbone again.
Oh my god, dude. Step Brothers or Talladega Nights?
Step Brothers, my God, what a classic!
Yeah, man.
Yeah,
Tenacious D or Flight of the Concords?
Flight of the Concords might be a hot take. I love Jack Black. I love Jack Black, but dude, Flight of the Concords, I think musically and comedically, I think they're a little stronger.
I think so too. That whole "Wear an Eye Patch, Man" with David Bowie. My buddy and I quote that all the time. If we're like, dude, I feel like like I need to dress up for this. Like my buddy's always like, "Get an eye patch, man." Like, I was like, What? Um, Iridium or ACS1?
Iridium. I haven't played the ACS one, so I have to go with Iridium.
Oh, it's cool. All right, Rhett, this is the last one, bud. All right. Sometimes this is the hardest one, sometimes it's the easiest. But if you could take one album and erase it from your memory, so you've never heard it before, just so you could go back and listen to it for the first time again and experience it, what album would that be?
Uh, oh man.
I know, right? Doesn't have to be your favorite album of
No,
all
no, no.
time.
But and I know what I know what. Yeah, it's like the feeling of like, oh my God, what am I listening to? This
Mhm.
is blowing my mind. You know what? And I'm going to admit to something that I'm a little bit embarrassed of here.
No judgments in this room.
It would be OK Computer,
Okay.
because I didn't really give Radiohead a chance until about 4 years ago. I was
Okay.
on tour actually with Noah. And I was in the back of the van, and I realized, like, you know what? I've never actually listened to Radiohead. I've never really listened to Radiohead. We were driving through Pennsylvania. There's snow on the ground, and I was in the back of this Ford Transit. Worst 15 passenger van ever, by the way. And I put on OK Computer and just sat back there with my headphones on, and like my head leaned against the window and watched Pennsylvania go by with that. And that experience really stuck with me because it was the excitement of knowing, like, oh, I just found one of my favorite bands at
Mhm.
28 years old or whatever it was, like it can
Dude.
still happen. you
Oh
know?
my god, yeah, man, for sure. I mean, if you are you into like power pop stuff? Do you like if if you're into the Beatles and Queen kind of thing, have you ever
Oh
heard of
God, yeah.
Jellyfish? Do you ever listen to
Yeah, in
Jellyfish?
fact, they're from Atlanta, right? The Jellyfish?
I
And
believe so. Yeah.
Tim, oh God, yeah, I've hung out with him before. We actually did a video together at Rick's one time. Shit, where's Tim Smith, I believe, was the bass player in Jellyfish.
They've had a rotating cast, but like Spilt Milk was that for me. Like their second
Yeah,
record, that album is just, and even today, like I feel like Jeff Buckley's Grace, and like there's
sure,
there's a few like, but that record in particular, man,
dude.
so good.
There's a lot of those records that I just remember sitting down and going like, man, Sky Blue Sky,
Oh
Wilco is
yeah.
another one of
Oh my
those,
god.
because so I got married in 2017, and we went on our honeymoon to California. And it was the first day of our honeymoon. We flew into Reno and had a 3.5 hour drive across the Sierra Mountains to get to our
Oh
destination. And
yeah.
so picture like the Eastern Sierras at dusk. And it was my first time listening to Sky Blue Sky. So like Impossible Germany is playing, and you're just driving through the mountains. Like that
Mm,
image, every time I hear Wilco, I have that image. First day of your honeymoon, you're in California, like, ugh,
yeah.
beautiful.
That record is fantastic. Well, dude, I don't want to take up any more of your time, man. This was so much fun. I feel like I could talk to you for 3 hours. I do feel like there's so much we have in common about this stuff too, man. It's like it's crazy because there's not, there's a lot of different personalities and different people in the YouTube universe, and people listen
Right.
to different stuff, but like we're kind of on the same greasy blues, funk, soul kind of thing. So
Yeah.
but I
Yeah,
appreciate you.
I feel like I like most people, I like a lot of different stuff, but I think at the core of everything, there's two elements to all my favorite music. A, w- the songwriting. What is the song saying? And B, is there a groove? Like, does it
Mm,
groove? You know,
mm-hmm.
and
Yep.
that's it.
Mm-hmm. Totally, 100%. Man, I couldn't agree more. Well, Rhett, dude, thank you so much. Everybody, you know where to find Rhett. You can find him on Instagram. You can find him on YouTube. You can find him on his website. What's your website?
Rhettshull.com.
Okay, cool. Dude, Rhett, so you can hang for a second. I'm going to shut this down. But everybody, thank you so much. Oh, Jeff popped in here with a super chat as well. Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate that. You guys take care of yourself, take care of each other, and we'll see you next time.